Now that we have our layout looking pretty good in this snippet section, let's start integrating Flex Slider in order to make this a slideshow. So this slideshow is going to be a bit different than the one that we had above because it will have multiple items displaying at a time. Also, if we look at our design, there is no pagination and our back and forward icons are different. So let's find an example of Flex Slider that is somewhat similar to this so we can see the configuration for it. So I'm going to do a search for Flex Slider examples, and I'll go to the first result, which is flexslider.woothemes.com. And so the one that we have at the top is similar to this, where we have just one item showing at a time. But what we want is something called a carousel, where we have multiple items displaying and we can go forward and back through them. And so here are some default options for this. The animation is set to slide. Now when we look at our example for our slideshow at the top here, it's using a fade between the different options, which I think looks good for this kind of example. But at the bottom, since we have multiple items displaying, a slide animation seems more in tune with the kind of data we're presenting. I would expect multiple items to slide rather than fade. So we'll use that, and then animation loop false. Now if you're not sure exactly what these properties do, you can do a search in the Flex Slider options page. So I did a search in Google for Flex Slider options, and I'll jump to the GitHub page where it lists the options, and then you can do a search in here for a particular property. So here's animation loop, and it says gives the slider a seamless infinite loop, which means that if you go right like this and you get to the end, it will continue to go. In this case, you could see it slide back to the beginning before going to the next item again. So this also seems like a good way to present a carousel. In our case, we don't want it to seem like we're displaying new content when we're actually just reusing the beginning content. If we can show the slider jumping back to the beginning, then the user who's using this will know, we're going back. The next value is item width. So by default, Flex Slider will display one item per slide. But if you set the item width, it will show how many items will fit in the current element. And the item margin is a space between the two items. Okay, well, I'm good with these default options, so I'm going to copy them. And I'm going to go back to our browser, and I'll scroll up to the top where we have our current Flex Slider displaying. And we can just paste this bit into our window load function. Now we'll want a different selector here because both of our slideshows on this page will have the Flex Slider class, and we only want this applying to our one slideshow that we're working on right now. So I'll do a search for snippet to jump to that part in our HTML. And now just like we did above in our other slideshow, we're going to be wrapping these section elements and list item tags because that's the structure that Flex Slider expects. And we'll be wrapping that in an unordered list with a class of slides. And at this point, I think we need to add one more container element, a div, with a specific class for this slideshow. So let's create that structure right here. So let's start with the div, we'll give it a class, and let's call it snippet slideshow. And now we're using an underscore here to indicate that this is its own component and not some sub element of the snippet component. And then within this, we'll have an unordered list with a class of slides, but if we want an example, we can go to the HTML here, and you can see, yes, unordered list of slides, and then list items. So we'll do UL, class equals slides, then we'll do a list item, and we'll wrap that around this section. So I'm just going to indent the section, and we'll end our list item here, and we'll wrap a list item around our other section and indent everything. And now we need to add a couple extra sections in order for our slideshow to work, because right now we only have two, and they're both going to be displaying. Flex Slider is smart enough to know if everything can display, and it can just turn off the slideshow elements. So let's add two more list items. I'm just going to copy the last list item and paste it in 2 times. And then after the last list item, what we're going to do is end our unordered list and then our container div. And now finally, we have a structure that will work with our slideshow. So I'll scroll up to the top, and instead of using the Flex Slider class here, we're going to use snippet slideshow. Let's save this and jump back to the browser and go to our example page, roll down to our slides and refresh.